Welcome to Quick MCAT Lessons, where I try to explain MCAT topics in 10 minutes or less. Today, we're going to talk about blood. Blood is a connective tissue that circulates through the body, delivering oxygen and nutrients, and it removes waste and supports the immune defense and clotting. It consists of two major components: plasma, which is about 55% of the total blood volume, and formed elements, which is about 45% of the total blood volume, and formed elements include red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. Starting off with plasma. Plasma is the liquid portion of blood and is about 90% water. But it also contains electrolytes like sodium, potassium, chlorine, and calcium. It has plasma proteins like albumin. Albumin is used to maintain oncotic pressure, like we talked about earlier in the Starling forces episode. We have fibrinogen. Fibrinogen is the clotting factor precursor, which we'll talk about in a second. You have globulins. These include antibodies and transport proteins. You have nutrients like glucose, amino acid, and lipids. And we have hormones, gases, and waste products like urea and carbon dioxide. Now, just a quick tip. Plasma is not serum. Serum is essentially plasma minus the clotting factors. So close, but not the same. The production of blood cells and platelets is called hematopoiesis. It's triggered by hormones, growth factors, and cytokines. The most notable are erythropoietin, which stimulates red blood cell development, and thrombopoietin, which stimulates platelet development. All blood cells originate from the bone marrow, but the T cells mature in the thymus and monocytes differentiate in the tissues into macrophages. The thymus is a small lymphoid gland and it's between the superior part of the lungs. All cells, however, are produced by a hematopoietic stem cell. For most, this cell develops into a myeloid stem cell, but for lymphocytes, it develops into a lymphoid stem cell. Moving on to red blood cells, which are also called erythrocytes. These are the most abundant formed element. They are biconcave, they are anucleate, which means they have no nucleus, and they are filled with hemoglobin. Their primary job is to carry oxygen to tissues and carbon dioxide to lungs. Just to give an idea of the scale here, each erythrocyte contains about 250 million molecules of hemoglobin, which means that each erythrocyte carries 1 billion molecules of oxygen. Erythrocytes, they have no nucleus, they have no organelles, just pack hemoglobin in them, and their lifespan is about 120 days. They're produced in bone marrow and they're broken down in the spleen and liver. They rely entirely on glycolysis for ATP, with lactic acid, which arises from fermentation as the primary byproduct. To measure the quantity of red blood cells in the blood, there are two common measurements: the hemoglobin and hematocrit. Hemoglobin measures quantity of hemoglobin in blood, giving a result in grams per deciliter. Hematocrit measures how much of the blood sample consists of red blood cells, and it's given as a percentage. The normal hemoglobin for a male is between 13.5 and 17.5 grams per deciliter, and it's between 12 and 16 grams per deciliter for women. A normal hematocrit is between 41 and 53% for males, and between 36 and 46% for females. And as you may have noticed, both average hemoglobin and hematocrit are higher in males, and this is due to androgens like testosterone. White blood cells, also known as leukocytes, are part of the immune system, but they make up less than 1% of the blood, or about 4,500 to 11,000 leukocytes per microliter, but these are critical for defense. So you have two main categories. You have granulocytes and agranulocytes. Granulocytes have visible granules that contain toxic compounds to invading microbes. They are involved in inflammatory reactions, allergies, pus formation, and destruction of bacteria and parasites. In these, you have neutrophils, which perform phagocytosis and fight bacteria. You have eosinophils, which fight parasites and are involved in allergic reactions. And you have basophils, which release histamine in inflammatory responses. Histamine is released by mast cells and basophils, and it plays a crucial role in immune responses, allergic reaction, and various physiological functions, like regulating blood vessel dilation and constricting airways. And since it's known for its allergic abilities, when you take antihistamines, these are anti-allergic meds, like you might have heard of citrazine or Reactin, and these are meds that help with allergies, and these are called antihistamines. Agranulocytes, on the other hand, do not have granules. In agranulocytes, you have lymphocytes and monocytes. Lymphocytes are required for the specific immune response. Of this, you have B cells and T cells. B cells make antibodies, and T cells are cytotoxic and you perform helper roles. Monocytes are phagocytic and become macrophages in tissues. Each tissue may have a specific name for their macrophage. For example, in the central nervous system, they are called microglia. In the skin, they are called Langerhans cells, and in bone, they're called osteoclasts. Finally, platelets. Platelets are also called thrombocytes, and they are cell fragments derived from megakaryocytes in bone marrow. They're involved in the clot formation, and they help form the platelet plug, and they help initiate the coagulation cascade. They're present in high concentrations of about 150,000 to 400,000 per microliter of blood. We're going to finish off with a little bit about coagulation. So coagulation is a process by which the body forms a blood clot to prevent blood loss after vascular injury. Clots are composed of both platelets and coagulation factors, which are proteins. When the inner lining of a blood vessel, the endothelium, is damaged, this exposes the underlying connective tissue, which includes collagen and a protein called tissue factor. Platelets adhere to this exposed area, they release their contents and begin to aggregate. At the same time, coagulation factors initiate a cascade that ends with the conversion of prothrombin to thrombin by a protein called thromboplastin. Thrombin then converts fibrinogen to fibrin. Fibrin forms a net-like structure, and this stabilizes the clot. This mesh captures red blood cells and platelets, and it seals the site of the damage. And eventually the clot is broken down by plasmin, which is derived from plasminogen. So a quick recap: blood is plasma and formed elements. Plasma carries nutrients, proteins, and hormones. Red blood cells transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. White blood cells defend against infection, and platelets initiate clotting. You should know hematocrit, plasma or serum, basic immune cell functions, and some stuff about the red blood cells. That's it for today. In the next episode, we'll explore blood types and compatibility.